Hey everyone, Gill Gross here. Post-match, Novak Djokovic versus Taylor Fritz. Casper Ruud versus Andrey Rublev in the semifinals of the 2022 Nitto ATP Finals. If you're not here for spoilers, click off the video in 3, 2, 1. The final is set. It'll be Novak Djokovic versus Casper Ruud. Novak looks to cap off what has been a very successful year in the tournaments that he has played. Casper Ruud is in another huge final. Miami, Wimbledon, the U.S. Open, and now the ATP Finals. It is a impressive body of work on hard courts, especially for Casper Ruud. Of course, one of them being on clay. Even though it's funny, he didn't even have a great clay court season this year until Roland Garros. Anyway, I digress. Let's get into Djokovic Fritz first, and then Rublev Ruud. Djokovic Fritz is a match that Novak wins in 2 tiebreaks. There was barely anything between the players in this match, but it was another example of Djokovic raising his level in all of the decisive moments in a really, really impressive manner, especially in the larger context. If you look at how Novak's last event ended in that final against Holger Rune, where it was a patently unclutch performance by Djokovic, to play a match like this just kind of reinforces the idea that there's really no systematic issue with Novak Djokovic's ability to play under pressure. That was just kind of a bad match, and this match was the other opposite spectrum of it, where in 2 tiebreaks, Fritz played very solid in both of them. It went down the stretch. There was still nothing between the 2 players, and Djokovic came up with awesome stuff. First set tiebreak 5-all. He hit a couple of great forehands. But the next point at 5-6, the first set point, Fritz was serving. It was probably the best point Novak played in the entirety of the set. He made a block return. Fritz opened up with a big forehand inside in, and Djokovic hit an incredible neutralizing forehand on the run. Right on the baseline, unbelievable depth to get back to neutral in that rally and survive what was a good first serve and a good first forehand. Once they got back to neutral, Novak hit a very deep cross-court forehand trade. Fritz handled it all right, but there wasn't too much on it, understandably. And then Djokovic measured this beautiful forehand down the line. That was just perfect timing, perfect accuracy, unbelievable. So in that point, you kind of saw Novak do what Fritz can't really do as well, which is steal a point, come from behind in a point. And you could also argue that Taylor could have been at net after that +1 forehand, although it's very unsurprising given the way Fritz plays that he wasn't at net. And all in all, you kind of tip your hat to Djokovic for playing just such an incredible point to steal the first set, or to win the first set. In the second set tiebreak, I want to give a shout out to a very impressive half volley backhand winner that Novak managed at 4-all when Fritz hit a passing shot that he probably thought was a very good one. He got the ball to bounce in front of Novak, but Djokovic actually just kept his backhand grip, hit topspin, really flat, but you know what I mean, topspin grip, and hit through this half volley backhand from inside the service line and hit it for a clean winner. At 5-all, he made a great return, a great one, followed by a chip and charge where he hit such a deep backhand slice and put away the volley. And that got him to his first match point. He made a bad mistake on that first match point. At 6-all, gorgeous serve +1 swing volley that he hit for a winner. And that's another example. Fritz probably hit a pretty good return there. It was pretty deep in the court, but Djokovic took what was a good return, stepped inside the court, took it as a drive volley, and turned it into that, a serve plus one that Fritz wasn't going to be able to defend against. On match point, the second match point, Novak read the first serve of Taylor Fritz, the location well, put a pretty good return back in play, and Fritz missed that first ball forehand. A somewhat disappointing way to end that second set tiebreak. But at the end of the day, it was a good return by Djokovic. Just shouldn't have been a ball that Fritz missed. Got a little bit too close to his body, got the footwork off a little bit. So that's kind of the outline of how the match went down in terms of these two very tight tie breaks and Djokovic doing a lot of really good things to win them at the end. But tactically overall, Djokovic definitely wanted to use the cross-court slice backhand. I thought it was very effective. The reason it's effective against Taylor is because Fritz does not slice his backhand. He hits over pretty much every backhand, and it's difficult sometimes to hit drive backhands when the ball is below or at the level of your knees because you have to hit up on the ball. But Fritz hits his backhand fairly flat, so he has to take quite a bit of pace off of the backhand in response to the ball staying low on the Djokovic slice. Plus, I've found that Fritz's footwork can be just a little bit slow moving up to the ball. And then you have the advantage of putting Fritz in a vulnerable position defensively when he has to move inside the court. But all in all, I think Fritz also had his fair share of good moments against the Djokovic slice. Some assertive backhands that he was able to hit off of lower quality Djokovic slices. Some occasions where Taylor was able to make forehands out of it and take control of the point. I thought it was kind of a mixed bag, but overall, just looking at the match as a whole, I think the backhand slice served Djokovic pretty well, and it's something that he can definitely use going into future meetings against Fritz. That being said, Novak wasn't really at his best in this match. Potentially weary from that very physical match he had against Daniil Medvedev yesterday. Novak didn't get to net much. I didn't see a lot of drop shots. He wasn't taking as much time away as he normally does, especially in that first set. The forehand wasn't all that assertive, and it just felt like all in all, he wasn't making Taylor think about a lot and defend as much as he probably could have and should have. And then on the other hand, Fritz showed that he can go toe-to-toe with Djokovic if he's not having to defend and if the points are staying linear. He continues to be very impressive from a ball striking standpoint. He rarely looks outmatched in baseline rallies, regardless of what the pattern is, because he's now so strong on both his forehand and his backhand. And when it comes to just hitting drives from the back of the court, very few players are as solid as Fritz. And to go in with the game plan that Djokovic did, yes, he sliced his backhand, but he didn't do all that much else to disrupt the rhythm of Fritz. To go into that match from a Djokovic perspective, it wasn't going to really be good enough to pull away from Taylor. And indeed, Novak didn't pull away from Taylor. He just found a little bit something extra in the big moments. That's all I got on that one. Let's move on to the second semifinal. But first, I want to remind you that coverage of the ATP Finals is brought to you by BetUS. For this year's year-end championships, play with America's favorite sportsbook. Get $125 extra on your first deposit with the link in the description and the promo code Gill Gross. That's $125 extra on your first deposit at BetUS with the link in the description. Ruud Rublev, a blowout. It was 6-2, 6-4. The second set was not as close as it appears on paper, with Ruud jumping on Rublev very early on to go up a break. He would go up a double break. It was actually a late comeback that Rublev staged to make the score of 6-4 in the second set. Again, kind of looked like it was competitive, but really it looked like Ruud was in the driver's seat from the get-go. Casper played great in this match, but I do want to kind of talk about a pattern that we've kind of seen with Andrey, because it wasn't a good performance by Rublev. And at the end of the day, when you get down to what happened in this match, Rublev missed too much. There were too many mistakes, too many unforced errors. I mean, that is the crux of what happened here. Yes, Ruud did a lot of really good things, but if that match was going to be a close one, if Rublev was going to win that match, he was going to have to play much, much cleaner. And I think Rublev does need to contemplate why he might not be playing his best tennis in the matches that mean the most to him. Unfortunately, that is a clear pattern at this point. The most important matches of Rublev's life. 0-5 in major quarterfinals. You look at the Masters 1000 finals he's played. He lost, 6-3, 6-3 against Tsitsipas in Monte Carlo. He lost 6-2, 6-3 against Zverev in Cincinnati. So both of those matches have been one-sided. This was the biggest semifinal of his career, and it ends up being a 6-2, 6-4. So it's not just that he has lost these matches, because that wouldn't be as much of a concern. None of these were gimmies. Tsitsipas, Monte Carlo, he's the underdog. Zverev, Cincinnati, he's the underdog. Many of these major quarterfinals until this year, he was the underdog. Now this year, Tiafoe, Cilic, that's not the case. But it's really the fact that his performances have not been up to his standards on these occasions. That is something that he needs to look at and try to assess, address, and figure out how to do better in the future. The good news is he's putting himself in these positions. The good news is that he continues to play really well at ATP 250s and ATP 500s. And, he has some work to do. Casper Ruud, though, he was awesome. He really was. First of all, his heavy stuff was working. The high-heavy forehand did give Rublev a lot of trouble, and I didn't think that was going to be the case in these conditions. I thought that with Rublev being the guy taking the ball early, staying up on the baseline, hitting a flatter ball, I thought Ruud was going to be in trouble if he allowed himself to move back, play a little bit more defensively, and play, with heavy spin on the forehand with a lot of net clearance high over the net. But that's actually not how it played out. Ruud's high, heavy forehand, especially to Rublev's backhand, was effective, because even on this court, which you wouldn't call high bouncing, it was getting above the strike zone of Rublev. And I did think Andrey had quite a bit of trouble timing up his backhand and being effective on his backhand off of Ruud's high and heavy forehands. Casper also had a great serving match. This has been a common theme throughout this week. The first serve of Ruud has been really good, except for the Nadal match, where it just wasn't as potent as we've seen it in other matches. But he served 76% first serves in play. Rublev was far below that number. Andrey was at 60%, which isn't an awful number. The problem is, and this was, one of my main tactical takeaways, Ruud was brilliant with how he handled Rublev's second serve. And allow me to nerd out for a second. Let's nerd out together, all right? Let's talk about every Rublev match, how his second serve has been handled, because we've had 4 separate opponents. They've all done something different on the off of Rublev's second serve, and it's pretty much decided the outcomes of Rublev's matches. So we talked about Medvedev, passive neutral approach, not trying to attack, no intention to attack. Rublev won 60% of the second serve points in that match. His next match against Djokovic, I'm sorry, I flipped the order, but you get the point. In his match against Djokovic, Novak took it early, and I'm going to talk about court position here. He took the return early, and whether it was on his backhand or his forehand, Novak could attack. Novak could be aggressive. Rublev got killed against Novak. He won 36% of his second serve points. Now against Tsitsipas. Tsitsipas took the Djokovic approach. He stood in. He wanted to be aggressive. But he can't with the backhand. He can't do effective backhand. He can't do effective damage with the backhand return of serve. And because he was standing in, Rublev was able to easily serve it to the Tsitsipas backhand, and Stefanos had very little options other than to hit the backhand return. What did Ruud do? Ruud could have been in Tsitsipas's position. His backhand, I'm loving what I'm seeing from it, but still, it's probably not the best backhand to attack a second serve with. Ruud stood deep. Ruud stood deep to buy himself time for the runaround. He did not accept backhands. He hit forehands, and he took very aggressive cuts on those forehands. And again, a lot of it was super heavy topspin to Rublev's backhand, sometimes even to the forehand. But man, I charted a lot of Ruud second serve returns straight into Rublev errors because of how effective Ruud's massive, heavy second serve forehand returns were. So Tsitsipas actually stripped himself of time by standing in. Ruud bought himself time, and that's why Ruud got his forehand into play. Tsitsipas got his backhand into play. Ultimately, the number for Casper, or the number for Rublev against Ruud, was 45% second serve points won, although misleading. Rublev won a couple of second serve points down the stretch there in the second set. When I looked midway through the second set, when Ruud was up like 6-2, 5-2, Rublev was under 40% at that time. So it climbed a little bit at the end. Ultimately, Ruud still with an effective finishing number. And I just thought it was interesting to see all four players take a different approach, and very interesting to see Ruud make a better decision than Tsitsipas there, because Stefanos should have done that. Stefanos should have moved back and hit and used his big weapon forehand off of Rublev's second serve. Casper did it, Stefanos didn't. So I wanted to make that point. Ultimately, again, Ruud's backhand continues to impress. The final with Djokovic, I'm not going to do a full-blown preview here, but the head-to-head is 3-0. They have played twice in the semifinals of Rome and once in the ATP finals. Djokovic has looked very comfortable in every single match they've played, but that has been in large part due to Ruud's backhand weakness, which Djokovic has attacked ruthlessly with serve and volley, with net approaches, approaching the Ruud backhand, and also on the clay, a lot of runaround forehands, a lot of getting it to the Ruud backhand and then kind of cheating to the left and getting big aggressive runaround forehands to attack from there. So I think, as it will with many, many matchups, Ruud's improvement on the backhand is going to complicate this. Just keep in mind as you watch this, the aggression on this court is paramount. You have to get your first strike in. The serving is obviously so important. And it's in these kinds of quick conditions, it's so important that you are taking control and being aggressive. So enjoy the final. I will have Monday match analysis with a special guest as well. I'll do a breakdown, and then I'll bring on a guest who I'm really excited to talk to. I think he is one of the premier tennis minds in the world. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.